Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. I thought I'll take this opportunity to give you an update on the electrical issues that I was facing. The red arc system started to play up, and the error message that came up was DC over voltage. And with the help of red arc, we managed to trace it back to a circuit breaker that had tripped in the battery casing outside of the caravan. Anyway, I thought that would resolve the issue, but unfortunately, that circuit breaker kept tripping time and time again. The dealer was of no help, so Red Arc was the only people I could talk to, and we checked through the rest of the system, and everything seemed to be alright. So Red Arc felt that the circuit breaker was the issue. Anyway, when I got back into Exmo, I managed to get an appointment with an auto electrician, and he checked through the system and he determined that it was the circuit breaker that was tripping as well, and went ahead and replaced it. And since the circuit breaker was changed, we haven't had an issue. However, I have to admit that I didn't have very much confidence in the entire electrical setup that was done by Crusader. Another issue that I came across was the water heater. When I was going around the van to do a check, I noticed that the entire water heater unit had come loose from where it was mounted on the outside of the caravan. I have just removed the vent cover or the vent door to the hot water unit, and take a look at all the screws. Every single one. This tells me that there is no anchor point in the foam at all that was used when this van was put together, and not even silicone in the individual screw holes, which would definitely have helped hold the screws in place. Crusader quality, folks. I removed the panel and I was absolutely shocked to find that every single screw holding the water heater in place had come loose. Now, I couldn't remove the water heater completely, as there were water and electrical connections and gas connections to it. Taking a closer look at the screw holes, it was obvious that all the screws were just pushed in using an electric drill into the composite skin of the wall of the caravan. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of the composition of the composite skin, but basically it's a thin layer of fiberglass on the outside with gel coat, foam on the inside, and another layer of fiberglass after that. And that's what makes up the wall of the caravan. If the holes are actually drilled before a screw is put in, there is not a lot, but there is at least some holding power. If no holes are drilled and you just push the screw in, what's going to happen is it will crack the fiberglass and the screw will have no holding power. And unfortunately for me, that was what was done to my van. I called the dealer and asked them what I could do about it. And unfortunately for me, they didn't have a solution. They were aware of the problem, which indicates that they have come across this on other vans as well. However, they haven't been able to resolve it yet. Now, this of course was of no help to me. We are only in our 4th week of our lap, and we still have a long way to go. So I decided that I would try and do a fix on my own. I got myself a tube of silicone and I liberally applied it to all the holes and to the screws themselves, and I pushed the water heater back in place and pushed all the screws in place. Lucky for me, there were a few screws that still had a little bite, and I used that to prop up the water heater in the correct location and pushed all the other screws in. So far, this has worked, but I have only traveled on tarmac. I don't know what it's going to be like on dirt tracks, and I still have the gib to do. And take a look at this. This is the airbag controller unit, and we had some water on the tracks coming out of the floor, and obviously it got into the system. Now, another issue that we discovered when we were coming off the Ningaloo coast was that the brake actuator wouldn't stop pumping. I called the dealer and they said they would look into it and call me back in a few minutes. I waited an hour, didn't hear from them, called again, and I was told they were too busy, they haven't looked into it, they will look into it now and call me back again in a few minutes. Waited another hour, and again, no word from the dealer. Called them one more time, and I got exactly the same message. And they said that they will look into it, try and contact someone, and they will get back to me. Of course, I didn't hear from them. So what I did was I got on the phone and started calling all over Exmouth to see if anyone might be able to fix it. There were a few people who told me, yeah, they would take a look at it in about 2.5 months' time. Unfortunately, that wasn't going to work for me, as we couldn't stay in Exmouth for 2.5 months. So I contacted the dealer again, and they said, they still haven't got any word, they will get back to me. But needless to say, never heard from them. Now, bear in mind, this is now day 2. On day 3, I called the dealer again, and I said, what's happening? You know, I've had this problem, I'm stuck, I can't continue with my travels, you've got to have a solution. And they said, okay, we will call someone. Well, it looks like they finally did call someone, because the dealer principal called me back in about half an hour, and they said they've talked to Intelligent Engineering, and Intelligent Engineering has discovered that there is an issue of compatibility between the breakaway unit, which is BM Pro, and the brake actuator, which is a felt unit, the Hydra King. And what I had to do was to bridge the red and blue wire. But when I pushed for specific details of how to do this, he told me, he doesn't actually really know which side of the wire to bridge, whether I connect, whether I cut the wires and connect all 4 together, or what to do exactly. And he said that he will get Intelligent Engineering to give me a call. I decided I would be patient. I waited. Another hour went by, didn't hear anything. Called the dealer again. Didn't get to speak to him, left a message. I was promised that he would call me back. Didn't hear from him. Another hour went by, called again, and they said, we've already told Intelligent Engineering to give you a call. It's out of my hands now. So I waited a while more, and then I decided I'm going to call it Intelligent Engineering myself. So I just Googled up the number, called through, and I got through to the receptionist, and the receptionist told me, so sorry, there's no one here for you to talk to. Monday is a public holiday. Everyone's gone back already. So I explained to her my predicament, that, I've been stuck for 3 days now, and I need to be able to continue on my journey. I need to be able to speak to someone. When she understood the urgency of the situation, she said, I will call you back. And she did. She was brilliant. She said that she's got one of the engineers to give me a call. And after that call, the phone rang, and one of the engineers actually called me back. And he explained that they had discovered a communication issue between the BM Pro unit and the Hydro King brake actuator. And as a temporary fix, what I would have to do is to cut the red wire to stop the brake actuator from continuously pumping, remove some insulation from the blue wire, and to bridge the red wire to it. And he told me that this should stop the brake actuator from continuously pumping, and it would be safe to still tow the caravan. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have all the tools to take everything apart there and then. So what I had to do was I had to get some tools to do that. It involved removing the conduit retainer, pulling the wire harness out of the chassis, finding a suitable location, and then cutting the wires and then properly joining them and insulating them so that the balance of the wires don't cause a short when it's pushed back into the chassis, as the chassis itself is used as an earthing point. What happened was, when I went to get the tools, I noticed that the brake actuator had actually stopped pumping. I got the joiners and I decided, since it stopped pumping, I would continue to drive. On the drive down, I saw a sign for a parking bay, and I decided I would pull into the parking bay and see if the actuator had come back on. And unfortunately for me, the actuator had come back on. But I was still able to tow the van. So I decided I wasn't going to do the fix on the roadside. I was going to head on into Ballura and do the fix then. When I pulled into Ballura station, however, the actuator stopped pumping. So obviously this is an intermittent issue. And I decided, okay, if it's going to stop pumping, I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to try, after Ballura station, to head up to Port Hedland and try and get someone professional to take a look at it. Intelligent Engineering told me, the moment I know I'm going to be at a place for a while, to let them know, and they would overnight a new actuator out of me with a different wiring harness to it. The problem would be, however, that I would still need someone to be able to fix it. And I called ahead to Port Hedland, I called Broome, and no one would touch it. So my next option is to contact Darwin after I finish the Gibb River Road. I don't know if it's going to cause me an issue on the way to Darwin, because at the moment the problem seems to be intermittent. However, it hasn't locked up the brakes and it hasn't affected the way the caravan tows. I am, however, driving a little slower, between 90 to 95 instead of towing at 100 like I normally would do on the big open stretches. I'm not impressed with the dealer, but I must admit, Intelligent Engineering, once they found out the predicament that I was in, made the effort to call me, and they have offered to overnight a new actuator if I can find a place that would install it for me. On the way up to Exmouth, I had an issue with the range hood. We had it on as we were cooking inside the van, but I wasn't able to turn it off. So I was pressing all the different buttons, and eventually the range hood went off. However, it went off totally. There was no more clock, no more lights on it, nothing, and I couldn't put it back on. I'm going to try and get the van serviced in the near future, and I will report this back to the dealer, and I will try and see what they say in terms of getting it fixed. Well, I got into Ningaloo with no issue. On the way out from the Ningaloo coastal strip, the entire range hood unit came off its mountings and dropped onto the glass top of the cooker. Needless to say, it shattered the entire cooker top. Now, we slowly swept up all the glass that was on the countertop and on the floor, but the remaining glass that was on the cooker top, I didn't want to start removing that because some sections of it was actually glued on and some weren't. And I also didn't have a space to responsibly dispose of all this cracked glass. So I did the next best thing. I got a roll of duct tape and I duct taped over the entire glass top. This has kept all the broken bits of glass together, and at least it allows me to dispose of the glass when I can dispose of it responsibly into a proper bin. When I was in Exmouth, I had the range hood looked at by Exmouth Caravans. This is the company which the dealer recommended I go to. And they went ahead and checked the range hood and said that there is definitely power to the range hood. The issue is with the range hood itself. It's very likely that one of the circuit boards is faulty and will need to be changed. So now, not only do I have issues with the brake actuator, with the circuit breaker tripping, I've also got problems with the range hood and the cooktop. The joys of owning a new caravan.